Hey, I want to welcome you to another monthly edition of the Disciple Making Church podcast. And this month I'll be your host. My name is Ken Adams, and I am the founder and director of Impact Ministries and also the lead pastor of Crossroads Church in Noonan, Georgia. And we're excited to have you join us for another opportunity for us to just talk about really all things disciple making and how that looks and works in the local church. And so today I have a couple of special guests joining me. This is Pastor Mike Keaton, and he is a part of Impact Ministries as well as oversees sort of the church ministry side of Crossroads Church. And then also Jennifer Walker, and Jennifer is part of the administrative arm of Crossroads Church. And we are all going to just talk a little bit about what does it mean to give people a map for ministry, or a map to help somebody to grow spiritually. And so I'm excited about this subject, because really we're trying to look at how do we help people get connected from the being a part of a weekend crowd to really being a part of the ministry of your church. So, Mike, why don't we just start with you? When we say we're giving people a map, man, what in the world does that mean, man? What is a map, and what is a map for, man? Tell us about that.
Well, of course, I don't think very many of us use the old paper maps much anymore, right? But we certainly get maps from, the idea of maps from, we use our GPS maps on our phone and stuff like that to get from one point to another. And how helpful is that? It's needed, And when I think about this whole idea of disciple making, it's a process. Years ago we used to say, think process, not program. And so when I think process, I think journey. You're going somewhere. And so we want to take people on a journey and lead them towards maturity and this fully trained disciple. And so when you think map, that's what you're talking about, is helping them get from one point to the next, and then from that point to the next, and just the stages of growth through that process.
Yeah.
So that's the big picture idea of the map.
Yeah, that's good. And sometimes we use the terminology, we want to be a map church, not a menu church.
That's right.
And Jennifer, what's the difference between the two of those?
Yeah, I mean, a map gives you the full picture, and a menu, you just kind of get to pick and choose a little bit of what you wanted to do. And I know for me, when I first became a Christian, I was in a church that gave me a menu, and I just got to pick and choose. And when I first started learning what it means, I was like getting in over my head, and I was going through these classes that I just couldn't understand and everything, and the Christian life got hard, and I didn't know what to do. And then I started coming to Crossroads and literally got a map. I mean, so it was like, do this, and then do this, and that helped me to know, okay, I can do this, and I know where I'm going. And I think on those apps that you talk about, what's really cool about them is you can hit the direction button at the bottom, and it gives you the whole process of where you're going. And that was very important to me, because it's like I wanted to know my destination. Like, just tell me where I need to go, and now tell me how to get there. And then having somebody to help you do that is really key.
Yeah. So you just gave us a key word there. You said, I want to know the destination. So to help people understand this idea of a map, and to help people understand why we're even having this conversation, ultimately we're trying to lead people that are maybe kind of untrained or new to Christ or new to the church to a destination, right? So talk a little bit, Mike, about what is that destination, and how does having a map become a part of getting to that journey, like you said a minute ago?
So we say that the destination is really what Luke 6:40 says, which is a fully trained disciple. The disciple becomes like his teacher, his or her teacher, when they have become fully trained, right? So we say a fully trained disciple is the destination. And it's a difference between developed, trained and developed, just a whole other distinction. But, training is just, the things that they need to grow by, that process of how they grow. And so we just want to take them on that journey to get them to that place, And there's And I love the idea, the way you explained it too, Jennifer, is that, you can, punch that thing and get the, here's where I got to go next, and this is where I got to go next, and it's like the steps, the process of, here, this is first, and then this is next, and so forth. And so, so that's really, that I think in detail of that. I mean, it's really taking somebody that you invite to your church, they come to your church, and then they take steps to start growing. Okay, that's when it starts, right? I mean, that's when you're really trying to, I don't say drive them, but lead them to, to growth, And so we've kind of laid those out, this, begin with the end in mind. That's where we want to go, but we've kind of led towards, we've got these steps in place.
Yeah, and of course we talk about this around here a lot, but a lot of folks that maybe are just kind of catching us here on the podcast might not realize this, that we really are trying to help people to navigate, the same way Jesus did. Literally, if you go back 2,000 years ago, Jesus didn't use the word map, but he was certainly taking people on a journey, right? He was certainly taking people from what we would call untrained to fully trained, because those are his words in Luke 6:40, not our words. And so, so I think it's important to remember that this isn't just a process that's a contemporary thing that you do in ministry. This is not something that we've just created ourselves. This is literally based on the way Jesus did ministry 2,000 years ago. Right. Because even though it might have felt a little different or looked a little different, what Jesus was doing is that he was taking people on a journey to a destination to become fully trained, living out his character and his conduct, because he was about to send them out and to get them started leading the movement that he was going to leave behind. So, so really everything that we're talking about today, which is, to me, is what's so exciting, is that we're just trying to do in our contemporary context the exact same thing that Jesus did in his context 2,000 years ago. That's pretty important, if you ask me, right?
Right.
So
Definitely.
I think it's important, Ken, too, if you don't mind me interjecting. It's just, it's also very freeing, I think, to us as leaders and to the leaders who are watching as well, that we don't have to figure out a new thing,
Yeah.
I mean, we may have to contextualize it, obviously, to our day and time and to our ministry context, but the method is there, the principles are there. All we have to do is just apply them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so if you think about this, Jesus didn't say, hey, you guys pick and choose what you want.
That's right.
Jesus said, here's what's going to happen. You come follow me, you remain in me, you come be with me, and here's what's going to happen. Over time, your characters are going to become like my character, your conduct's going to become like my conduct, and then you will arrive at where I want you to be, right? So, Jennifer, in our context, in our church, let's say somebody begins to, start coming to the church. They maybe have a friend or a family member that invites them. They start coming. Probably the first step is they're going to come to our weekend service, right?
Right.
And so after they come to the weekend service, maybe sometimes it's for a few weeks, maybe it's for months, right?
Right.
So they will hear us over and over again, invite them to a class, and we call that class
Next steps.
Next Steps. Tell us a little bit about what is Next Steps, why do we have Next Steps, and what are we trying to accomplish?
So Next Steps is definitely a class that right now it's 4 weeks for the most part, and it is a class designed to tell us exactly how to become fully trained disciple. And that's what I love about that the most, is that we don't just give them a partial map, we give them the full map, knowing that they're not ready to take every step all at one time. But we want them to leave that class knowing exactly what they need to do when they're ready to take those steps. So we talk about everything from getting into a small group, serving on a ministry team, becoming a member, obviously salvation and baptism, that really is our front door there. Lots of people, even get saved at those tables, they're even get baptized and stuff, so those are definitely big parts. But we always talk about the discipleship process too, because we really want people to become fully trained. You can be part of a small group, you can be on a serving team and not be fully trained. But the destination really is to be a fully trained disciple. And so they need to know that up front. And so you don't cover it up, or we don't say later on we'll tell you about that. We tell you these are the steps to take when you're ready, and then when we're ready, we'll help you take those steps. And then we do have a table host that's always there, that's going to be their guide as long as they'll let us be involved in their life and help them take those steps along the way.
Yeah. And so logistically, when somebody signs up for this class, and they usually pre-register for that class, is that right?
Yeah.
And so then when they come in, we will provide them with a booklet that walks them through. They a lot of times they'll watch a video that we've pre-done, and they'll fill out the notes in the booklet. And what literally happens is that this is not a membership class. This is not not really even just an orientation. This is literally helping them to understand how to navigate their way through the ministry of our church. And what it will end up resulting in is that they will be positioning themselves to where the conduct of Christ could be true about their life. Is that right?
Right. That's
And so you did mention that there would be a table host. And so that's really huge, because that table host plays a role that really kind of connects the information that they hear to the actual step that they need to take. So what kind of person is that host? What are we looking for? What exactly do they try to do?
So for our hosts, we definitely want them to be leaders in our church, and we want them to be fully trained leaders, because we want them to model what they're talking about and stuff. And so we do that. We also look for people who are high energy, very good at relationships, that will do great with follow-up. Not everybody is that is their wheelhouse and stuff. So we do look for that, and we look for people that are available, that really want to be a part of that. It is a 4-week class. There's a lot of information, and so again, they're going to hear a lot over those 4 weeks, but they're going to need to come back and process it later. So that's what that table host is really for. Later on, and maybe 3 weeks down the road, they'll get a phone call, or they'll check in on the people sitting at their table and help them get into a small group, or see how that group's going, or refer another group to them if they needed to do that, and help them with their spiritual growth as far as serving, and the tests that we take sometimes, to help them understand their gifts, spiritual gifts, so things like that. And it's very important that they have a good connection. So we are very intentional of trying to set people at tables with the right type of table host. God is good, and He really does all that work for us. But it's amazing how many times people will sit at those tables with the leaders, and there's an automatic connection already there and stuff. So that really helps.
Yeah, that's good. So, Mike, you are a regular facilitator of this Next Steps process, and so from your perspective, I mean, what do you see there? I mean, has this class been effective for people? Are people really becoming fully trained? Are they taking these steps? What's your take on it? How do you see it working?
Well, I do. I think it's very effective, and I think that I loved a couple things. To kind of go back to what Jennifer was saying a while ago, is the big picture. Like they will see the big picture, and they may not be ready to take those steps yet. But it's kind of like any map. When you go look at a map on a wall or something like that, even if it's a map of a building, there's always a "you are here" indicator. And so it's great for them to see the bigger picture, because then they can identify, okay, this is where I'm at in this process. And that table host is their guide, and that guide is the one, because what we'll do in our class is, we will stop for a little while and let them discuss at the table, and that table host is actually asking them, so where do you see yourself with this? Where are you at in this? And they really do just get to engage in a very purposeful and intentional way there. And so we see a great retention rate. The people who come to that class and go through that class, it's probably close to an 80% retention rate in terms of people who stick, who get involved with groups, who start serving, build relationships, which starts at that table, of course. So the effectiveness, and not just from a metric standpoint, but in the life change standpoint. I mean, these people get plugged in and they start growing, and they start experiencing, the life of Christ, and their character and their conduct begins to change and so forth, and they see it, and so it's very effective.
Yeah,
it's probably it's a very successful thing that we've been experiencing.
Yeah. I'm glad you threw out the percentages of people that go through, and Jennifer, you look at these kinds of numbers a lot and the metrics, and you have probably even a little more detailed idea. How effective do you think the Next Steps process has been?
So definitely, even for our first-time guests, because I know that's always a big thing, is how do you retain first-time guests? For us, we get about 22% of our first-time guests come to the Next Steps, which is huge. And then of those 22%, we are connected, like he said, 70% of those, which normally adds up to then about 15% of our first-time guests getting connected. That means to a small group. That's not even just their serving opportunities, but getting them into a small group the first 12 months that they're here, and that's huge. So the rest of the people that are coming to that class might have been here longer than 12 months, and we've got obviously people move at different rates, but our goal is to get at least, that 20% of our first-time guests to come to that class, to just come and see. And then when they do and they hear, they're in. And that is an easy sell at that point. They are ready to get in. They're bought in. They understand what to do. We've made it simple. I'm a very simple person. I like it easy. Just give me my 3 or 4 steps and tell me what to do, and I'll go do those things. And I think that's key, is making it obtainable. People can say, I can do this. This is something I can do.
Yeah, that's good. And so so when you put the class together with the conduct of Christ, so just to help people get a little deeper dive here. So when we look at Christ and we look at his disciples and their disciples, we see some things about the marks of a disciple. We see that those disciples were members, or that they belonged to the church, which would mean they've taken a step of salvation. They've taken a step of baptism. So in this class, we walk through the importance of salvation. We walk through the importance of baptism. We talk about a membership class that they can take as a follow-up to Next Steps. When you look at Christ, you see the priority of being a worshiper, or we call it a magnifier. And then when you go to this class, we talk about the importance of having public and private worship as a part of our lives. We look at maturity. When Jesus and his disciples, and when he was making fully trained disciples, they were growing, or they were maturing. And so then in our church, we talk about how to connect to a group, which is where you begin to have spiritual maturity. So we literally are helping people go from their basic spiritual need to where it is connected to the ministries of our church. And when you take need and the place in our church where that need is met, then that is how fully trained disciples are made. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So I always use an illustration. I always like to think of it as, if I'm trying to grow or change my physical body. So I may go to a fitness center, I may go to a gym, and as soon as I get there, I've got all this equipment, I've got all these people, and there's 100 different directions that I can go, and there's all kinds of things I can do, which may or may not give me the results that I'm looking for. I may not even be using the right thing to meet my need, right? So I need somebody to come alongside and give me a map, a workout plan, right? And then if I even take it a step further and I hire a personal trainer, then that personal trainer says, let me show you how to take this machine right here and your plan and put those two together. And so literally that's kind of the same concept. We're not doing that for the physical side, but we are trying to do that for the spiritual side of life. So one of the questions that some of our listeners might have, I know we have gone through this. It's been a 30-year journey to get us to where we are right now. But Mike, where would you say, if you're a pastor in a church and maybe it's a small church or maybe it's a medium-sized church and you don't have a process like this? How do you start something like this? Where do you start? And how do you get it rolling?
Well, my encouragement would be to start with it. You don't have to have a 4-week class necessarily, but a class of some kind that could be focused on. I love what you said a while ago. Their spiritual need, right? It's not so much us driving them to take steps or leading them to take steps that we want them to take in terms of getting in a group and stuff like that. It's about their spiritual development. It's that map, it's that journey. And so you lay that out and then encourage them to come, and you share with them the what that looks like in your context. And so depending on your groups and your structure and those kind of things, it may be limited, it may be smaller. All of those things are fine. I would just say, just start and throw it out there and say, look, if you're wanting to grow spiritually, come to this class. And I'd be fine to even call it Next Steps, just like we call ours Next Steps, because we want to help you take a next step in your spiritual development. And if you base those steps on their spiritual need, then it's very it's built for them, and it's palatable for them. It is something that they want and need. So I would say that they can determine if they want 4 classes, 1, 2, or 3, however many. But I would just say start with a class, and we're more than willing to share the stuff we have, our content, even if you wanted a copy of it. But so I would just say figure out what it looks like in their context and at least offer something. Yeah.
And in fact, the funny thing is that over the 30 years that we've been doing this, we've called it a bunch of different things.
A lot of different things.
We've called it Steps to Growth. We've called it Connecting to Crossroads. We've called it all these different things. And we've also done it a lot of different times in a lot of different ways. Nowadays, a lot of times we do it on Sunday morning, so it's convenient for people to come. Occasionally we do a one night where we do it all together. We usually, at least for the first meeting, we'll have some light refreshments or something. We try to make it very much of a relational connection. Is that right?
That's right.
So as you think about the people maybe that are trying to figure this out, how would you describe how important is, years ago we used to call this an assimilation process, where we're trying to get people incorporated or assimilated into the life of the church. But just kind of as we wrap up this discussion, how important and how critical do you think this is, Jennifer, to the success of the mission and what we're doing?
So I think assimilation is a part of Next Steps, but I don't think it is Next Steps, because again, you can get assimilated into the church, kind of like you taught, but you're not fully trained. And the thing with the Next Steps is we're really helping people become fully trained disciples. And so whatever you do, whatever your class is, make sure you start with the end in mind. Make sure that you're teaching them how to become a fully trained disciple, whatever that looks like in your church. And then help them break that down into simple steps that they can take along the way. And it's a life changer. It really is. I know for me personally, again, when I was just picking and choosing and trying to figure out how to grow on my own, I wasn't doing a very good job, and I was really kind of getting frustrated. And I understand why a lot of people probably just walk away and don't know, because they don't know what to do. And when you go and people hear this class, and honestly, it's so easy, they're like, I could do this. And that's what you need. It's just, it needs to be simple. It needs to be so simple that people can feel like they can do that and they can accomplish that. And then keep helping them along the way to take those steps. To keep encouraging them.
Yeah, and I mean, both of you guys know, we hear people say all the time, nobody ever told me this.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody's ever told me how to do this or why I need to do this. And so I think hands down, it is one of the most important. We would say it's a system to help our process, to help the disciple-making process here. And so, we want to really encourage you, if you haven't taken any kind of a step toward creating a class that, or some sort of a format that helps people to connect from the crowd into community and really lays out. They won't be fully trained at the end of these 4 weeks, but they will have a plan for how to become fully trained as a result of these 4 weeks. So if we can help you in any way, if we can serve you in any way to figure out how to do that, man, don't hesitate to contact us. You can contact us at impactdisciples.com. You can also just go to our website here at our church, and we would love to come alongside of you and help you to do that. Another way that we want to help you learn what it means to be a disciple-making church is to come be a part of a annual event we do called the Disciple Making Summit. It's coming up in January. It's going to be January 27th to 28th. The link is right here below. You can check this link out. Go to our website. It's going to be an amazing 2 days. It's a Friday night, Saturday. We'll have main sessions. We'll have breakouts that are really going to bring to you some of the very best disciple makers around the country. And you are going to want to make this a priority in your schedule and bring your team with you. It costs hardly nothing to be here. And so the cost is very, very low. You get all the details of that when you go to the website. But we would love to have you come and be a part of the Disciple Making Summit. It is really one of the best places for you to get inspired, challenged, encouraged, and educated on how to be a church that's making disciples. So once again, just want to say thanks for joining us. If you would, please share this podcast with as many people as you can, as many people as you know, and like the podcast as well. That just helps us be able to get the word and the information out to a lot more people. And so again, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next month.